Hi, this is Dr. Clayton from Clayton Hypnosis Clinic. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Hypnosis Chat. I have with me, as always, the lovely Anjali. And today I'd like to talk about performance. And it could be sports performance, it could be testing performance. When I say performance, I mean any activity that you're doing where you have to do it well because you're being graded or judged in some way. So, and again, it could be testing, it could be sports, it could be performing music, which Anjali is going to help me out with today, learning about that. People talk about, especially athletes, but really everyone who performs in anything talks about going into the zone. And the zone is kind of a place where your body takes over. You start doing your optimal performance automatically. There's no anxiety, there's no fear, your mind is focused on the topic, and performance is optimum. So, and it seems sometimes like that's random, and maybe the people that are best at performing just somehow randomly go into that more often, or maybe they're just genetically or naturally good at going into the zone more reliably. But that's not true at all. Going to the zone is a result of certain unconscious factors that are the result of your thinking, feeling, and behaving. Your patterns of, primarily your patterns of thought. How you think about something will determine, to a large extent, whether or not you go into the zone. It's a somewhat complex topic, but it's something that you do have some control over. So, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Like sometimes, maybe all the time, I don't know, when you're playing music, you go into the zone. You know what I'm talking about, right?
If you're talking about on stage, or are you talking about when you practice?
It could be both, or either one.
Okay, then both, yes.
Okay, and do you, so you can think of times when you went into the zone. What percentage of the time would you say you go into the zone? 25%, 50%?
Right, that's probably more accurate.
Is what?
25.
25,
Yes.
Okay, so during the non-25%, what are you doing? Are you thinking about not making a mistake, or what? Thinking about not making a mistake?
Exactly.
Okay. And so one thing that people usually report, athletes that go into the zone or musicians that go into the zone usually report is that when you go into the zone, you're performing optimally and you're not making mistakes. So it's the times that you're worried about making a mistake that you're most likely to make a mistake or do something suboptimal. I actually did my dissertation on zone of optimal functioning training with hypnosis. So zone of optimal, okay, so the zone is short for the zone of optimal functioning. It's the mental space in which you can perform optimally. And it's different for each activity. So going back even further, there's something called the Yerkes-Dodson law that says for every activity, there's an optimal level of activation, which is like how psyched up or relaxed you are, that provides optimal performance or puts you in the zone for optimal performance. For example, for weightlifting or powerlifting, it would be very high on a 10-point scale. You want to be very activated in order to perform your best with powerlifting. On the other hand, something like chess would be lower. And then maybe something like baseball would be in the middle. So let's talk about music for a minute. So you follow what I'm saying about on a scale of 1 to 10, how activated your body should be. So I have kind of an idea, but what idea would you say, what number on a scale of 1 to 10, how active, alert, and psyched up should you be, or how relaxed should you be, where 1 is very, very relaxed and 10 is very psyched up? What do you think is optimal for music?
For classical music, I would say kind of in the middle, I would think. I mean, because you don't want to be completely amped up.
Right.
And you don't want to be completely mellow. It just depends on what piece you're playing, but I think 5 is safe.
Okay, 5. Okay. Oh, good. And actually, I was going to say 4.
Yeah,
so
4.
4 or 5 is like right where, and Anjali does often play very quick music, so I can see how somebody might say 5. So, okay, so like 4 or 5, you want to kind of be in the middle, and that's for a lot of activities, whether it's golf, maybe tennis might be a little higher, studying material might be a little lower, like you might want to be a little bit more relaxed for that. But the point is, for every activity, the Yerkes-Dodson law states, there is a optimal level of activation that promotes optimal performance. Okay, so we start, this was back in the 60s Yerkes Dodson-Law. Then from that, we had the idea of the zone of optimal functioning, like being in the zone. And there was a lot of study about that in the 70s. So where people were learning about the zone and how people go into the zone. And then, so taking that research, my dissertation was about zone of optimal functioning training, so that you can use hypnosis to train someone to go into the zone at the right time. So, so first step really for our audience is, learning a little bit more about the zone. So let's say, can you think of a time that you went into the zone and then another time that you didn't go into the zone?
Well, let's see, in the same circumstance or different?
Different memories.
It's like when you're practicing, sometimes you're not in zone, and that means you're not practicing effectively.
Okay.
But if you are in the zone, then you're able to, play the piece and passages effectively.
Okay.
On stage, you have to be in the zone. The conductor, his hands are up, and you have to automatically be there or not be there. Yeah. And if you're not there, it's going to affect the whole orchestra.
Yeah. So and I'm guessing also, Anjali says you kind of have to be there. And the way I'm interpreting that is, if you're not there, you're not going to be in the orchestra very long. Okay. So, some people, would not be able to go into the zone because they don't know how. They can go into the zone, but if they don't know how, or they just don't have it in them to do that at that moment, they're probably going to be called from the orchestra. Whereas Anjali and people who are successful in the orchestra rise to the challenge and get themselves into the zone. Yeah. And that's a very unconscious process. You probably, couldn't off the top of your head say exactly how you do that. You probably just, you have to get there and you get there. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'd like to talk about today is how you do that, how you get yourself in the zone. And of course I have some ideas, but I want to get it from the musician's, mouth. So, all right. So think of a time so let's actually take that moment where the conductor is ready or whatever. Mm-hmm. What do they do? Raise their little stick around and wave it at you. And right. It's like a wand. Zone.
It's like in track. Ready, set, go.
Okay. So right, in track. So, all right. So let's do it. Can you think of a time when you weren't really in the zone, but as soon as the conductor, you had to go, you went into the zone? Can you think of a time like that?
It's easy to do that, because if you're tired from already playing an hour and a half show, mm-hmm. and the intermission is gone and you're still tired, it's hard. You just have to be there. It's easy to be there, and there's a lot of.
Okay. So it's after intermission. You're tired. You're not in the zone. Mm-hmm. But then once you have to go, you have to be in the zone. Okay. So can you think of a time that you made that instant transition?
Probably. Month-wise, like February.
Anytime. Well, anytime. Like for example, when you were. Maybe intermission was over and you had to do it again. Yeah,
my arm was almost about to fall off after the Mozart Requiem.
Okay.
Basically, in February, I just had to be there for the last peak. We have to be there.
Mozart's Requiem, is that something that most people would be familiar with?
Yes, if you watch the movie Amadeus.
How does the tune go?
There's a lot of different tunes.
Is there one that we'd be familiar with, or is it?
I'm not sure that most people would be. But they know, if they've seen Amadeus, which a lot of people have. It's Mozart wrote it on his deathbed. It's very exciting piece. It's very long and it's challenging for violins and
sure.
Anyway.
Okay, good. Okay, so all right, so you just did that, and then there's an intermission. Okay, so go to the moment right before mm-hmm. You have to go. So you said you're not in the zone. That in that particular time? Okay, so you're not in the zone.
Or it might be right after the piece. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So, or it might be right after. So, okay, so go to that thing right, as intermission is coming to a close. How do you know that you're not in the zone? Is your mind scattered? How do you know you're not in the zone?
Because I'm not thinking about the piece that I'm about to play.
Okay, you're thinking about other things.
Something
your
else.
Your mind is wandering.
Completely, yeah.
Okay.
Or I'm thinking about how the audience is going to see me. All those things that we talked about in the first episode.
It's funny because we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Not about the music. I'm thinking about all these other things.
Right. Part of the reason I'm asking Anjali first is because I think naturally are going to come up the things that we've talked about a lot and we're going to talk about again today. Thinking about not the piece, but the people or just other random things. Mm-hmm. Or do you ever think about yourself? How do I look, or is that not?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So attributes of not being in the zone: thinking about yourself, thinking about the other people, not thinking about the subject. Mm-hmm. One other thing I want to mention that we talked about either last week or the week before is the difference between process imagery and end result imagery. End result imagery is thinking of the thing that you want to do, whatever, the end result of whatever you want to do. And it could be not the end of the song, but it could be like this next stanza or whatever. Whereas process imagery is thinking about what you're doing while you're doing it, the steps that you're taking to do it. And that one actually is less good for being in the zone. Your brain knows how to go into the zone. And if you think about the end result, like what you want, if you just tell your brain, okay, do that, okay, here's what I want, here's what it sounds like, your brain can go and it knows how to do that. But if you try to micromanage your brain, that's good for practicing because you learn it better. But if you try to micromanage your brain, it's anti-zone. So if you try to do any particular, like change your technique or really even think about your technique while you're doing it, that will tend to be anti-zone. So what we've got so far is, process imagery as being anti-zone, thinking about yourself or the other people as being anti-zone. Okay? So this thing, the zone that's very valuable, can optimize performance in any activity, which seems random. It seems like people don't usually know why they go, or they never know why they go or don't go into the zone. So we've already gotten a couple of clues as to how people don't go in the zone. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, so same event. As soon as I want you to really hone in on that moment. We're not going full speed. We're going 1/8 speed. So it's that transition between you have to go now, like before you have to go and you have to go now. Maybe, as it's getting closer to that moment, maybe you're sort of coming to attention, or maybe you're not, whatever. I want you to pay attention to what you're doing. And then at some point you have to be there. And it could be when he taps the thing, the podium or whatever, raises his thing, then you have to be in the zone. Okay, so I want you to focus just on that moment. So you've got your mind state before where you're thinking about other things or whatever. So I want you to slowly go into that moment where he raises what is that stick called? Baton, his baton. Where he raises his magical baton. And what happens then? What happens to your attention?
I have to focus.
On what?
You have to, it's a complex question.
I'm sure.
Because you have to look at the conductor, but you also have to know what notes you're playing because you have to be looking at him, but you have to know, like you can't just, you have to know basically what you're playing. You have to be confident. And sometimes if I'm not in the zone, I will think, let me just get this over with.
Okay.
That's
okay.
One common
thinking
thing.
about self again and thinking about other things in general. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But anyway.
So, yeah. And that's an interesting thing, because if you are aware of things if you're aware, see, we have a very aware guest here today. We have a very aware guest who's in the zone today. So if you are, if you're aware of what the anti-zone things are, you won't do them accidentally, or you're less likely to do them accidentally. It's really easy to make a mistake accidentally if you're not fully aware of what that mistake is. Okay. So, for example, an example I give sometimes is if you want to be picked up too now. She's like, oh, me too. So
Maltesers are always in the zone. They always want something, and they can always see,
That's right.
They're always in the zone.
They're always in the multi-zone.
Yes.
Okay, so like, for example, let's say we take a person who is smart, but he's from the past, like Benjamin Franklin, and we put him in front of a stereo. Of course, he's never seen one before, and he might, if he just starts fiddling with it, he might accidentally turn the volume up too loud because he doesn't know. He's not aware of what all the buttons do. But if you say, this is the volume, and then make him turn it up too loud, he's unlikely to make that mistake again. Once you know how to do a problem or a mistake on purpose and you're aware of it, you're much less likely to do it accidentally in the future. So that's why it's so important to be aware of the anti-zone thing. So for example, if what I was getting at is, if an anti-zone thing is, I just hope this is over soon. Of course, your brain thinks it's helping you by saying, oh, it'll be over soon. But in reality, it's pulling you out of the zone. So as the leader of your brain, okay, I'm going to eliminate that thought. I'm not going to be thinking, I'm going to be thinking, okay, focus on the music. I know this music. There's a certain amount of fatigue in the background, but you are a warrior and fatigue does not bother you. So you work best with fatigue. See, that's a good positive suggestion. There's fatigue, but you work best with fatigue. Now let's focus on this music.
Fatigue is my friend.
Fatigue is your friend. So, so the point is, you can identify these anti-zone thoughts, and when you label them as anti-zone, you can eliminate them easily. You won't accidentally do them. 9 times out of 10, whenever your brain does something that's not helpful, it is attempting to help you in some way. It's just doing it wrong. So your job as the supervisor, the leader of your brain, is to step in and say, oh, that's actually not helping. Do this instead. Okay, so that would be a good example of that.
And what would be a good example of micromanaging, which is not good?
Micromanaging your brain would be, okay, that's back to the process imagery. So for example, if you think, oh, here's a good example. Let's just say there's a certain part of the music. I'm just making stuff up. I know a little bit about music, but I'm not a music expert. Let's just say that there's a certain part that has to be played louder.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't want to say to yourself, okay, I got to make sure I play this part louder. You already know how to do that. And if you try to micromanage, it's going to screw everything up. Okay. So you have to trust your brain. Once you've practiced and you know how to do everything, you have to trust your brain and let it do its thing. That's what I mean by end result imagery. Okay, brain, do your thing. There was getting a little off topic, but there was an interesting story of, I believe it was Henry Ford. And there were two sides. They were, of course, all the automobile manufacturing was done by hand, by people. And he was having a problem with them not being motivated. So he split them into 2 teams, and he didn't even say anything to them. He just, one of the teams finished 6 cars that day, and they had no idea what he was going to do. And he just came in there with a giant piece of chalk and drew a big 6 on the ground. And then the other team the next day made it a point to make 7 cars. So he erased it and put a big 7 on the road, on the ground, without even saying anything. And this kept going until they were breaking records making cars. So the point is, don't tell people how to do their job. Especially if you already know. If you're in the training process, it's different. Then you want to do process imagery. But if you already know, if you are physically capable of doing the thing that you want to do, just tell your brain to do it and trust that your brain knows how to do it. So when you trust your brain will give you its optimal performance. So end result imagery, the thing we were just talking about, is about doing the thing that you already know how to do most efficiently. Process imagery, thinking of it step by step, is about learning the skill better. And you do that not when you're performing. So performance, zone-centric thinking is end result thinking, telling your brain to do it and trusting that it will do a good job. Okay, so, and we're sort of segueing into zone thinking. So we've identified anti-zone thinking as being thinking about other people, thinking about yourself, process imagery, where you think about the steps. Okay, so what is the opposite of that? What's zone-centric thinking? That would be really just one thing, focusing on the thing that you know how to do. So having the idea, like trying to translate the music, if you know a certain piece, getting that, maybe hearing that piece, getting that piece in your head. And I'd actually like to ask you, so,
yes.
So all right, so the conductor lifts the baton. So what is the thing that you focus on? You say you focus. What do you focus on specifically? Slow down, stop time right there. What are you focusing on?
What am I supposed to be focusing on, or what should I be?
What do you focus on when you successfully go into the zone?
Basically, the first measure of the piece,
okay,
or the mood of the piece. Like again, that's a great word, the zone. I'm glad that we're going over this because I have to be there. Often, it's complex with me because I hear a lot. I'm good with my ears, and then sometimes, sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't with my hands. But yes, you have to think about the first note, basically.
Okay. So you're thinking about, and it's what I'm hearing is you're almost getting ready to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, go. You're thinking about the thing that you have to start. So, and same thing with someone doing a race. I think they're just thinking about one thing that's like their go feeling.
Yep.
Same thing with other athletics, and then the same thing can be applied to testing. So rather than, if you're now studying is a little different than testing, because studying, you've kind of got time to improve your method. So you can use both process and end result imagery. Whereas testing, on the other hand, is you're definitely performing. So when you're testing, it's like, again, okay, I'm going to do this. So sitting down and just having your mind open and being ready to answer questions or whatever it is. So
I have a question.
Sure, yeah.
How do you get into the zone with a piece that you do not know? Like you've looked at it not even once. You just got the music and you're sitting there like, okay, like I don't know what this sounds like. How do you get there initially?
There are two answers to that. Number one, are you talking about you having to learn a piece before the performance?
Yes.
Okay.
Practice.
If that's the case, your goal is not to go into the zone. The zone is just for skills that you already have.
Okay.
So now you're doing the other side, which is process imagery.
Okay.
So you're focusing on not being in the zone, but on the process that you have to take, practicing the steps, maybe identifying what the steps are, identifying the music and so on. So there's a learning phase and a performance phase. The performance phase is the one where you want to go into the zone.
Okay.
Now, you might find that as you're learning, you have kind of a learning zone also.
Okay.
And to promote that. So it's not a zone about the music, it's a zone about learning. So if you want to go into this kind of learning zone, then again, it's like, okay, I'm going to learn this thing. Just like, okay, I'm going to play this music now. This is what it feels like. Okay, I'm going to learn now. This is what effective learning feels like. I'm going to go into the learning zone.
Okay.
So does that answer the question? Okay.
Yeah.
One other thing, and this is, I think, super important and very subtle. So we talked about the Yerkes-Dodson law with a certain optimal level of activation required. It's important to understand the dynamic of, it depends on where that level is, depends on how resourceful you are at that time, how mentally and physically tired you are at that time. Let's say you're drained, or let's just say that you're really alert and ready to go. You can actually handle more when you're alert and ready to go than you can when you're fatigued. Now, you can go into the zone either way. It's just that the zone for when you're alert and ready to go is more, maybe more active or doing more material or, taking on more at once. And then you can go into the zone that way. Like here, I'll give you a better example. Let's say that I need to clean the house. That's my job for the day. If I'm really feeling alert and resourceful, I can think about all of it at once, and I could be doing 3 things at once, and that's how I go into the zone. On the other hand, if I'm really tired or if mentally I'm out of it, maybe I just need to focus on one thing at a time, and then I can go into the zone that way. So the zone is lower if you're, so you have to, if you're more fatigued or if you're not as resourceful. So an important thing about the zone is, number one, understanding the principles of the zone, focusing on the end result, for example, focusing on the subject, identifying things that are anti-zone and eliminating those. But also there's this factor of, okay, how do I feel right now? And really finding the zone is, a lot of it's kind of a feeling thing where, just like I'm sure music's like that, athletics is like that, maybe if you're, you adjust technique slightly if you're fatigued or something like that. So being aware of how you feel is also a big factor of, so number one, the sort of beginner version is eliminating anti-zone things, like thinking about yourself, other people, trying to micromanage your brain, and focusing on what the actual topic is, maybe the feeling of what you're doing or the main idea of what you're doing. The leader's job is not to, the supervisor in a factory's job is not to do everybody's job. The supervisor is to have a bird's eye view of what needs to happen and communicate that effectively to everyone else. So that's end result imagery. And that is, he needs to have a big picture. She needs to have a big picture of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So, and that's how you go into the zone. Mm-hmm. And then the other main factor is, well, how am I feeling right now? That needs to be the guide for, do I take on more or do I take on less?
That's good to know.
Okay.
Athletes are always like, I'm in the zone. Now there's a whole new meaning to it. It's way deeper than
the zone is about doing your optimal performance, whether you're technically being judged or not. I mean, you can, if your goal is to, like, let's say you're a runner and you just run for your own benefit and you go into the zone when you're running, you're not being tested, but going into the zone has the pro of giving you your optimal performance, and then the maybe con of you're not improving your technique as quickly as you would with process imagery. So you have to, decide what your goal is before you decide how you're going to think about it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this week. And what's going on? Bye for now. See you next time.